everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Michelle Creber, and because I was a butt and forgot to vlog the entire time I was in New York City, I thought I'd just review what I did for you here instead. My parents and I were there for 4 nights, and we accomplished a lot. We saw 4 Broadway shows and pretty much did every touristy thing you can think of aside from seeing the Statue of Liberty. And it was my first visit to New York City ever. I know. Crazy. So yes, let's start from day 1, shall we? Well, okay, day 1 was pretty boring. We really just flew and then went to bed because we were really tired. So even though we got in at like 6 p.m., I was not feeling the, oh, let's go on a night city adventure. I was like, mother, you get your Starbucks, I sleep. Day 2, well, it's getting exciting now, folks. We went to Times Square for the first time. I met up with my good friend Natalie, who is currently taking theater college there right now. Very proud of her. Dad met another woman, and for a second I was a little bit concerned about my parents' marriage. She is very pretty though. Then we saw Beautiful, a Broadway musical about Carole King's life. Abby Mueller was starring in it as Carol, and she was incredible. And the set they had was my favorite of all the shows we saw. Everything was always moving and changing colors, and these big platforms that formed like the inside of a music writing place. Then the last thing we did that night, probably the most touristy thing we did overall, was go to the Stardust Diner.
I need a hero. You know what I mean?
Moving on to day 3, so let me see if I can conjure some English language. For those of you who don't know, the sole purpose of the trip was actually just to see Sarah. Well, correction, my grad present from last year was to go see Waitress, just the musical in general, before we didn't know that Sarah Bareilles was ever going to star in it herself. We just know that she'd written the music for it and we really wanted to go to New York. But we kept getting really busy and then really sick, so we just put it off. And then when the news came out that Sarah was going to be actually starring in it for 10 weeks, we were like, Air Canada, we gotta go. And we were beyond lucky because Sarah Bareilles was getting over some kind of sinus infection and she didn't go on the night before we got tickets. But we saw her and she was so good, even though her voice was a little raspy and you could tell she was under the weather. I've seen her live before and like, she was still perfection. And even if Sarah wasn't actually in it, it still would have been my favorite of the 4 we saw. So folks, if you're going to see one musical in New York City, then after the amazingness that was Waitress, we saw Rockefeller Center, got some classic New York pizza, visited various landmarks. Then in the evening, we saw this guy, Come From Away, which was very Canadian and incredible, about the 7,000 people that got diverted to a small town in Newfoundland called Gander during 9/11. When the airspace shut down. Heartwarming and inspiring, and it's a cast of 12 people, but they all play about 3 to 4 characters each. And we didn't know until after we saw it that it was nominated for 7 Tony Awards the night before, so we were really lucky that we even got in. And then after the show, we went to the Hard Rock Cafe called, what the heck was that? Suddenly I knocked my knuckle and I'm British. We went to the Hard Rock Cafe because for some reason I was craving mozzarella sticks. Day 4, we went to the top of the Empire State Building. Well, at least my dad and I did. Mom is not very comfortable with heights. But she found some Wi-Fi while we were up there, so she was just fine. Then we went and saw Ground Zero at the 9/11 Memorial, which was heartbreaking, but it's also very well done. And the new trade center they've built down there is beautiful. After that, we took the New York subway to Grand Central Station. I felt the only proper way to capture the feeling of Grand Central Station was to take a time lapse, and I thought it was pretty cool. Check it out. Then the last show we saw was Chicago, a classic that I have never seen before. I don't know why, it's just never been on in Vancouver since the time where it would have been appropriate for me to see that show, I think. I didn't realize how many classic musical theater songs came from that show, so I'm really glad I got to see it. Especially on Broadway too, because if you're gonna see a show for the first time, Broadway's the place to do it. It was cool too because Chicago was really the only dance show we saw. I also really liked that the band was incorporated into the main set, so they were really featured because the band does so much. I don't like it when you can't really see them. Props to Chicago. After that, we went to Birdland. A brilliant Brazilian musician by the name of Joe Bosco was playing and he was fantastic. I loved the atmosphere there too. Like everybody was there to appreciate the performers. They'd already eaten their food, they'd already had their conversations with the people at their table, and we were all just sort of grooving and into the music. And I was like, Oh yeah, this is my crowd. Even though I'm the youngest here by like 25 years, I'm into it, man. Our last day in New York started off with a nice big old flash flood warning. But I mean, we're Vancouverites, so we don't let a little rain get us down. I'm realizing as I'm saying this intense beam of sunlight is shining upon me. Usually the weather's not this good. Through the rain, we drove to see my other friend Colette, who was also in theater college in NYC. Thankfully, the rain subsided and we got to explore Central Park a little bit, shop in the Plaza Marketplace, and by shopping, I mean I got frozen yogurt. I'm really not a big shopper. And that was pretty much the last thing we did there. Our Uber driver to the airport shared some very interesting things he thought were Canadian stereotypes, like the fact that he thought we ate a lot of bologna, which I have never heard before. And our flight was delayed for about 4 hours because of the storm that was hitting the east. But we left and we got home, and I swear I'm not dabbing right now. I'm trying to block the sun. So yeah, overall, I liked NYC. I have to say it's not my favorite. Like, I don't think I loved it as much as a lot of people do. Like, it's like, oh, it's the best city ever. Well, like, you can't beat Broadway. That's about it. So yeah, I hope you have a fantabulous day, and and yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Bye. Oh.